All right, Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd and serving a 22-and-a-half-year sentence in prison, plans to seek a review of his conviction from the Supreme Court after Minnesota's Supreme Court declined to hear the case this week. So his attorney said that they are going to raise the issue of whether Chauvin was denied a fair trial due to pretrial publicity and potential violence had he been acquitted. And Judge Peter Cahill wrote in a memorandum that Chauvin's sentence was harsher than the state's guidelines of 10 to 15 years because he, quote, abused his position of trust and authority, end quote, and treated Floyd without respect and denied him the dignity owed to all human beings. He, of course, later pled guilty to federal charges of violating Floyd's civil rights, and he was sentenced to 21 years in prison, set to run concurrently with his state sentence. What do y'all think?
Look, man. George Floyd died of a fentanyl overdose. George Floyd was shouting, "I can't breathe," while he was still sitting in his car. Okay, there were no verifiable, from the autopsy, there were no verifiable physical ailments that led to his death. It was simply the fentanyl. So the idea that Chauvin murdered George Floyd is out of the question. He did not. George Floyd died of a fentanyl overdose. Now, all the other things about the violation of civil rights, well, sure, but he is not a murderer. George Floyd did not get murdered. He killed himself with fentanyl. That's the reality of the situation.
Look, Chauvin, maybe it was unprecedented to knee on someone for 7 minutes or whatever. Maybe there was enough to release him from his job. But we all know it happened. Fentanyl overdose. That's it. End of story. Chauvin should not be in prison. He maybe shouldn't be a police officer. Maybe get him a different job. But he does not deserve to be in prison for 22 years. He's already not a young guy. 22 years. He's going to come out, if he comes out, as like an old man. All of his life is gone for something that he didn't do.
Yeah, this is all like humiliation. Look, like since day one, since all like the George Floyd stuff happened, I knew like this guy, he didn't do anything, right? Everyone saw the body cam footage like within the first, 2 months of it happening, everyone saw it, yet cities were getting burned down. Obviously, this guy did not get a fair trial, all right? Everyone was scared that they were going to have their houses attacked, that they were going to have their houses burned down by BLM. Obviously, this guy did not get a fair trial, and if this does get to the Supreme Court, I hope that our boys in the Supreme Court figure out, and clear his name. We love Clarence Thomas.
I mean, we do just have to think about it.
He's a national treasure.
Just a little mental exercise. What is going to happen to our country if Derek Chauvin got released? Like what sort of calamity is going to be caused if and when this occurs? Like I cannot see. Now, obviously, we should not put the reality of what happened in the George Floyd situation and the fact that Derek Chauvin is innocent when it comes to murder. We should not put the truth aside to save every city in the country from being burned down, or should we? I don't know, because that is what would happen. We would see violence like we've never seen before.
I don't know, because we said that about the Kyle Rittenhouse situation, but once he got released, the protests were like very minimal. Yeah. If Chauvin gets released, it'll be more than for the Kyle situation. But Americans also like to forget things like very quickly. So it'll be like a couple month deal and then it'll be gone. Think about BLM now. Like we see no demonstrations. They ran out of money. Like how are they going to fund even these protests?
That's true. But right now what's popping in my head is we do have to remember that we're coming up to an election year, right? This just happens to be coming around the corner of an election year where BLM is most prominent typically. Yeah. And the fact that this just happens to be happening right now could all be coincidence, but it also could be playing into like my conspiracy theory mind where it's like, well, like, they're bringing this up and it's almost an election year and Trump is running. Yeah. Are they going to just bring this back, BLM Part 2, the second year of Derek Chauvin type thing?
So speaking of the George Floyd case, the city of New York settled a class action lawsuit yesterday, agreeing to pay $13.7 million in damages because the plaintiffs had claimed that members of NYPD had violated their rights via the use of unlawful tactics. And according to the New York Times, the city would pay around $10,000 to each of the roughly 1,400 people who were arrested and or subjected to force by NYPD officers during these 2020, again, not protests, but riots.
Yeah.
I am so floored at this decision that, I mean, you see this, mostly peaceful yet fiery protest here going on. And it's like, what were the cops supposed to do? Sit around, sit back, and watch the city burn, I guess, is what cops are supposed to do these days.
These people get 10 bans, and our J6 fellas are in solitary confinement right now. The only systemic racism in America is against white people, and it's verifiable in every sense. In a sense, this situation, this 10 bans, is sort of like reparations. And we've had some reparations talk all over the place recently with, I think, Evanston, Illinois. They're giving reparations to some of their citizens. And then you have another form of reparations in California where they're allowing judges to make decisions based on race. And I think we can lump all three of these together. But don't forget the fact that reparations have already been paid, through the great, what was it, LBJ's program? What am I talking?
The Great Society?
Yeah, the Great Society, or welfare, just welfare. That's the word I'm looking for. Sorry about that. Through welfare, and the amount that white people put into the tax system and the amount that black people take out of the tax system, reparations have been paid, but reparations are not about getting paid. It's about tearing down society and tearing down law and order altogether, because if you listen to these people, if you listen to leftists and Black Lives Matter people, law and order in and of itself is a racist and white supremacist, institutionally racist organization. So that's what it's really about. It's institutional, or it's instituting a socialist income redistribution program and just eliminating law and having widespread violence all over the place.
Well, I think this is just all a play to make Michael Jordan rich, because a lot of Jordans are going to be bought after all these people get $10,000 each.
So they'll be bought now. They weren't bought previously. They were just looted.
Yeah, exactly. How about we send $10,000 to each small business that got destroyed?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean,
did they get retribution ever?
No.
There was...
Well, that's what insurance is for. That's what all the criminals would say.
And it never happened.
All the insurance that's only paid for large part by white people in this country, because a lot of lower income people that happen to be black don't.
Businesses would pay insurance for their buildings, which if they have a large payout that they have to get money back, they will see as a result a higher premium.
Yeah,
which would mean the business would still pay for it. Right.
It sucks. I mean, you see the Arby's getting burned down. You see Target's getting burned down, which Target, we disavow Target, but you see Target's getting burned down for no reason.
We don't want to advocate.
We don't want to advocate violence towards Target. Obviously, you see all these Louis Vuitton, Gucci, all these very high-end stores getting destroyed. Why do they pick those?
Yeah. And just for a little bit further detail here, I did some digging as you guys were talking. So this was, of course, a brutality lawsuit, which is just mind-boggling to me. But they claim that because police used pepper spray and batons during these riots, what they would call protests, that was traumatic, the attorney said. Their experiences were horrible and traumatic.
Using the exact non-lethal forces that they have, that every BLM protester says police officers should use instead of actual lethal force. They're no, pepper spray, tase, batons, but no guns, nothing like that. But then they get that used against them because they are being violent, and they're oh, well, this is actually traumatic for me, and I need $10,000.
It'll just never be enough. We will never meet their demands. It's just about complaining and being a victim, the victim complex. Yeah. But you will never, with reparations, you'll never meet the demands.
Yeah, the line will never be reached. There is no line. They just tell you there's a line.
If you like that clip, there is plenty more where that came from. Click the link in the description below to subscribe to the News and Why It Matters YouTube channel to watch the full episode.